So this is starting to look better. It's just hard. This is a very counter trend trade if we try and go long here. If we pop above this, I may try and get long. We'll see. They had a bunch of buy orders come in there that got absorbed. Trade would look something like that. I'm going to try it. See if the buyers can give it a push. It's a little bit of a fight right now. It's a little bit questionable. It's a pretty counter trend trade. It's pretty aggressive, guys. If we pop up pretty good, I'll probably bring my stop underneath this little low we just made, but I need more confirmation than this before I do that. There we go. It's a little better. All right, I'm going to bring my stop here. Give it a couple ticks of room because this is a very counter trend trade. So I want to be a little bit aggressive about controlling my risk here. I think if we come down and break that the idea may be over. You can see other people were trying too. We did have some buyers come in, some volume come in. Let's see if they can hold it here, pop it back up again. Otherwise, we'll just take a very small loss on this. Be like $10 or $15. Really just want to see a little bit more volume come in to confirm this move. And then I'll bring my stop up again. There we go. That's pretty good. Bring my stop up again. And I'm going to be ready to possibly sell this as we get to the underside of this area right here. You know, that's a area where we might see some resistance. Do see a little bit of selling in here too, so don't love that candle. I think I might go break even on this just to protect it. It's first trade of the day. It's counter trend and a bit of selling volume there as we got into this basing area, last little basing area. So if we break above this, we should be in better shape. If we can get above like 75, just need another bullish push, in which case I'll bring my stop up a little bit more, at least lock in a tiny bit of profit on this. But worst case scenario now, we're out with just commissions. Let's see if they can't push it up, get some volume in this. I'm not moving to stop yet. Might get taken out, break even, and that's okay. Again, it's a little bit more of an aggressive stop trail than I like to do, but because it's a counter trend trade, normally I would have kept my stop under here, but this thing could rip hard in the opposite direction. So I'm out break even on this. Again, like I said, I could see us breaking through this resistance and coming up and retesting this zone up here. Again, you could try a long off this. It's just a weird area with all this resistance overhead. I would like it to come a little bit deeper, to be honest. I'm going to try another long here. This is a very aggressive long, guys. Probably don't recommend like totally following me into this. Let's see what happens. I'm going to try to get out, I think, at VWAP, just for an easy scalp. Let's see if we can't pop this up. Move stop to break even. Okay, got that one. Could have probably got the full 1.5, but with VWAP and that resistance right there, it just wasn't worth risking for those extra ticks. So good trade there. Worth noting that my first trade would have actually ended up working. So my trailed stop was down here, 56.50. It would have never came down to that trailed stop, and it would have easily gone up to that target. So would have been basically two good ones, two nice shots today. All right, guys, let's start this breakdown. We're going to begin with this first trade, the one that was break even, looking at the 15-minute chart. Now, the 15-minute chart, overall, the market had been in a very large range, like on the hourly or 4-hour chart. And the 15-minute had been making higher highs and higher lows and was starting to break down. So this structure was definitely technically bearish. We had this huge impulse downward at the open, but the market tapped into and was reacting at this strong level of support from this reversal area. This was support, support, support. We briefly broke below it, tried to do a retest and continue downward, but failed, and then popped back up. So I was looking at this area as an area where I could see buyers potentially coming into the market. Now, this is the 1 minute chart, and normally for this type of trade, I would like to have seen the 1 minute chart already breaking some structures to the upside. So this was really a very counter trend trade for me, which is why I trailed my stop as aggressively, and realistically probably too aggressively, because the trade did end up working if I had done my normal rules for trailing the stop. But what I did see was, this was a very strong move down with no retracement. This was the last major support and resistance area. In fact, if we look back at the 15-minute chart briefly, that support and resistance area was right here. It was this high, tapped it, and then this low. There was a little touch of it right here on the smaller time frames as well. So it was a pretty significant support and resistance area. And I was expecting the market to, at the very least, come back up to that and retest. And, we had VWAP right there as well that the market could come retest. I could realistically see the market coming all the way back up to this balancing area right before this sell-off. And at the time, I did have a zone drawn up here on this candle because it was the last very low volume candle before the major selling, which is one of the things I look at for my supply and demand zones. And we'll come back to that idea later. Okay, so this 15-second time frame is really where the basis for this trade was. I want to draw your attention to a couple things. So one, this little candle here that's highlighted in this yellow box, if we look down at the volume, this was the last, again, very low volume candle. And then we had this strong volume push down into that support area with a pretty significant rejection. So a lot of volume there with a wick like that is definitely something that's going to grab my attention. Now, I'm not going to just buy over the top of that candle because you can see we had a wick on the bottom of this candle too with even stronger volume. So I'm not just going to buy aggressively there. But what happened was the buyers started to come in, and then we started to see volume increasing as price went up. In a typical retracement, you see volume decreasing as price moves into that retracement. So if you see buyers getting more and more excited as price moves up, that means there's still a lot of people willing to buy as price is going higher and higher. That's a good sign for the buyers. And once we got over this basing candle, this last low volume candle before this big volume push, that means that the buyers had taken control back from this point. And then we saw price hovering above that area. If you were to kind of think of a zone across here, price holding above that area. So we had the increasing volume, we had a good rejection candle, we had the price action taking out this basing area, this last small sort of micro supply area. And then what we saw was, as we consolidated sideways, volume died off. Okay, so that was where I was like, okay, I think there's a good chance of price coming all the way back up here and filling this in and retesting this major previous support, now resistance. Plus we had VWAP up there. So even though it was counter trend, we had plenty of room for this to hit my minimum target, which is 1.5R. So that's what I was thinking. So I took my entry right as I saw price break over these highs with the volume starting to increase a little bit. And that's when I took my entry. Notice that you could have taken an entry on this candle too, which was actually this one right here, because again, it just barely broke this high with increasing volume. But I saw that large trade come in kind of right as that happened and get absorbed. So I just sort of paused for a moment and waited to see if price could get back above that area. So once I saw price get above that large trade bubble, then I knew that the buyers had some real strength, and I decided to jump in. So it was a good trade, and it ultimately did work out. I was just a little bit overly cautious with my stop trail. And what you'll see is on the second trade, there are some elements that make it a more comfortable trade for me compared to this one. And that's where the real lesson is here. So let's go take a look at that trade now. Okay, so to show you this one, I'm just in my NinjaTrader market replay mode. And so I have this lined up to right about where that trade took place. So this was the first trade. At this point, what do we have? We had selling into this support. Buying stayed pretty strong on this retracement. It didn't really die off. And when the sellers had this chance to move it down on this basing candle, very low volume, the buyers started to take over. And now we started to see the buying increase a little bit as the buyers were taking over. And then we had this retracement that was again on relatively low volume, had a very low volume basing candle right here, and then a stronger volume push by the bulls. So at this point, it was definitely clear that at least for this moment in time, the buyers were in control of the market based on price action and volume. So this was still against the larger 15-minute trade, but at least I had the 15-minute trend rather, but at least I had the 1 minute trend and the 1 minute sort of strength in my favor. So the way that I do my supply and demand zones on these small time frames when I'm looking for entries is I look for this last very low volume candle. I want it to be a relatively significant low volume candle and then a stronger volume push out of that. So where was that low volume? It was right here. So then I go down to my 15-second and look to see what happens with price action as it comes into and taps into this area of low volume. So let's take a look at that 15-second. So right here, we can see price started to come down, hadn't quite tapped it yet. We see the volume kind of nice and strong on this last bullish push, and then again, the volume dying off into the retracement. So this still looked like a healthy impulse and retracement to me. So that being said, here's that low volume area, right? Here's the volume right before the increase on this push, and we're just coming back down into that. So if we just play this forward a little bit, okay. So now what do we see? And I don't have written down exactly what price I entered on, but what we see is price came in, price hit this area of demand that I had marked off. And now all of a sudden, on this bullish candle that closed near the highs, we start to see the volume increasing. So that's kind of all I really needed to see on this for me to jump in. It was a relatively aggressive buy, but I jumped in something like that. Normally, I want to go for a 1.5R at a minimum, but I really didn't want to risk just for this like extra point or so that price reacted to VWAP or reacted to this resistance. So all I did was I actually anchored my order right to the VWAP, and I just figured I'd get out there, and I just wanted this to be kind of a quick, easy scalp. I figured at this point, based on everything I was seeing, it was a very, very high probability of price hitting VWAP. And then the probabilities, in my opinion, got significantly less that price would go through this resistance and hit this target. So it just wasn't worth it for me to go for that extra point. And because I felt this was high probability enough, even though it was less than 1.5R, I did decide to take this trade. And again, we'll play this forward. And it didn't take too much. And you can see once volume started to come in and really confirm the move, it was pretty easy to hold at that point, and this did ultimately go to what my normal target would be, but hindsight's 2020. I'm glad I took the trade off where I did. Again, if you guys found this video helpful and informative, please subscribe. Please hit that like button. If you feel so inclined, leave me a comment. I would love it. There's a link to the Discord room in the description below, and I trade live almost every single day. You can join the Discord room to hang out with me there.